Next I can deal with the prism. We can't align this until we get all the rest of it together, but we can start off. So I put a tiny drop of glass cleaner on a cotton bud. And in case you're wondering, that's just normal domestic window cleaner, nothing esoteric. Clean those two outside surfaces first. That allows me to judge what the inside surface, the inside piece looks like. And I can see there's a bit of a smear there, so I'm just going to run the cotton bud in there, and you can see that I'm revolving the cotton bud backwards and forwards as I look through the window at the front of the prism. You can get quite good coverage. You can do quite a useful job of cleaning that surface. Now the smeared mark that I saw there is gone. Blow that out. You want to be extra carefully sure to make sure there are no threads of cotton from your cotton bud sitting down inside there. That all looks good. The flat face of the prism faces forward. If you put it in the wrong way, you'll soon discover it because it won't work. There are two screws that retain this in place. They also will adjust the position of that prism, which it will adjust our vertical alignment, aligning both our images so that they are on the same plane. So here I'm just adjusting those two screws until the prism looks fairly square with the front of the housing. That's a good place to start. I'm not bothering to tighten them up too much because we're going to be moving those. So there's the main body. That's all done. Can bring in this part. This is the arm. Again, we want a cotton bud with a tiny drop of glass cleaner on the end. There are only two glass surfaces. The outside one is easily enough to see, and the inside surface, again I'll rotate the cotton bud down there. That should pick it up. It's picked up a lot of other rubbish too by the looks of it. And then I can inspect that and see if I like the look of both surfaces. That looks good to me. The return spring here may come adrift. That's not at all uncommon. Here it's just hanging on quite nicely. That's good. Now we come to the assembly. This gets a bit more entertaining. First I'm going to clean these components. Make sure I remove any traces of the old grease or lubricant, and we just put a little bit of molybdenum on there when I put it back together. I can see from the state of the rangefinder here, if I hold it in the light properly you can see it. There's quite a marked area here. It's sort of a silvery grey colour. Now someone has gone to a great deal of trouble to rub graphite or something in there to act as a lubricant to keep that surface low friction. That's fine. That'll work nicely for us. Alright. Taking a cotton bud and a little bit of cigarette lighter fluid, naphtha. I'm just wiping that surface to make sure I get rid of any old grease. Being careful not to get this on the glass surface that I've just carefully cleaned. I'll clean that screw. and the brass bush and the wavy washer. Those components here are remarkably clean. They're not normally as clean as that. So, a little bit of molybdenum paste, and I just want to put a little wipe on the inside of this surface, and it's no more than a dirty mark really. I'll put my brass bush back in place and I will align it where it came from. Here's our little insert, the threaded insert. Now the raised portion, the central boss obviously runs in that slot. You have to get this in place. I've got these nice curved tweezers, they allow me to do this quite easily. You can do it with normal tweezers, it's just a bit more of a struggle. So I'm just leaning in, see if I can drop this into place. That's good. Now, just need to be using about 3 hands to do this. I'm putting a big screwdriver through the top to hold this in place. And the camera will lose its focus at this point probably. Zoom out a bit. You can see that here is our bush, which is doing its best to wriggle away. Here's our threaded bush, visible through the top. Put our arm in place. Align the hole with the bush. This is all supported on that screwdriver, which is pushing the bush from the other side to stop it all falling to bits. I'm putting a little smear of molybdenum on that arm around the brass bush, because that's where this wavy washer will run. And I can drop the screw into place, and with a bit of luck it will start in the thread like that, and we can take it off the stand. Now zoom back in. Now I carefully scribed a line around the end here before we started. And now I'm just going to, with this screw still loose, I'm just going to move the whole arm and the bush until that line is where I scribed it relative to the end of the arm, which is just about right on there. And I'm using my tweezers here, my heavy tweezers, to tighten that up. Make sure that my spring is lying loose in the slot there. Check that the arm moves freely, and it does. And now I need to get this spring in position. So this is a bit of an act. I'll see if I can do it so that you can see what I'm doing. Normally you just take the rangefinder, swing it away so that the spring is hanging free and you can get to the end of it. Feed that rod through the end of the spring, stretch it out and drop it into place. It just clips in there. And I'm checking that the arm returns to the rest position smoothly under its own steam without any problems. That all looks good and it feels good. I'm going to check the rangefinder now by looking through it out the window to see what I can see. And moving the arm with my finger, I can see that the moving image is high relative to the static image. So I want to adjust that down. And this is how I do it. Slightly loosen the front screw, slightly tighten the rear screw there, and I mean slightly, and then check again. And the moving image is still high. So I'll do it again. This is just a preliminary setup before we put this on the camera. And it's still high. I don't think I've moved that at all. That screw's not even tight. That'll be right. Alright, now it is very, very slightly low. So if the moving image is slightly low, you need to tighten the front screw. That's very good. My vertical alignment of my two images is very good at the moment. That's just great. But looking to see at an infinity target, I notice that when the arm is back against the body, the images still don't quite meet. That tells me that the arm's being held out too far, and so this little adjustment screw right here, that's the stop screw. I'm going to adjust that, unscrew that slightly. That's pretty good. Just a little bit more, I think. Alright, that's worked. That looks marvellous. I've got my images aligned. Mind you, this is outside of the camera. There'll be maybe slight changes once it's in the camera and fitted. But I'm happy that with the arm back here against its stop, that the images are aligned nicely at an infinity target, that they're aligned vertically so that everything looks nice and sharp. And the only thing I need to do now is to put a tiny daub of lacquer in this slot here and here to effectively lock these front components in, because if they shift slightly one way or the other, we'll lose our horizontal alignment. So I'll do that next. So taking some clear nail polish, and you can buy your own, you don't need to steal your wife's. I get a little drop on the end of a toothpick, and I mean a little drop, and I just lay it into that groove. That'll just percolate down, and it'll have the effect of locking that glass in position. And I do the same on the underside. If you get over enthusiastic and you do something silly like use the brush on that applicator, you'll end up with it over the front of the glass, and you will not be pleased with the result. So there we have it. That rangefinder is all clean. All the preliminary adjustments are made, and that's ready to go back on the camera body. To refit the rangefinder to the body, there's a couple of things I do as a matter of course. The first thing is to get a little bit of molybdenum paste, and I just rub it on that cam surface there. That's the one that picks up the boss from the focus mechanism. And the second thing I do is I put a couple of drops of lacquer, nail varnish. I'll put a little drop on each corner like that. And its job is to stop that from moving if the camera gets thumped and bumped, because otherwise you'd lose your rangefinder adjustment. Rangefinders can't really go out of adjustment without some sort of external force or abuse. So here we have it. I've set the focus back to infinity, put my rangefinder in place, pull it towards the back, making sure that the arm here is free, that it's not sitting on top of the screw or anything. We take our 2 screws, drop them down into position. All you can do is drop them down through the hole. And with a bit of luck they drop straight into position and you can screw them in place. That one went. So now I'll do its mate. Don't be surprised if this takes you half a dozen attempts to get right. That's not at all uncommon. If the screw doesn't drop down into the hole, and that one felt to me like it did not, tip it out and do it again. I'm just holding my finger over the top so I don't lose shutter buttons or anything. See if I can encourage that screw back out. Yeah, it's sitting sideways. That's it. Get it back out and have another go. That looks promising. Now, here I'm holding the rangefinder body to the back of the camera. There's a piece of metal at the back there, that makes a nice firm stop. So I hold it back so that it's firmly against something. Do my 2 screws up. If I can get the screwdriver to find the slot, there we go. That rangefinder is firmly fixed in place, but we haven't adjusted it yet. So now I've got to work on my adjustments. Well, the first thing I want to do, of course, is look out the window and see what it looks like to start off with. And I notice that my vertical alignment is still very good. My horizontal alignment at infinity, it is not good. It doesn't quite meet, the images don't quite meet at infinity, which tells me that the focus mechanism is effectively pulling the arm too far forward, and so I need to make an adjustment. Now, looking down from the top here, I see 5 screws. Now the one on the left, that's the pivot for the arm. Leave that alone. The second one to the left, that's the adjustment screw, our main adjustment screw. The one in the middle, that's the lock. We need to loosen that lock. So I just undo that. These are often locked down with a bit of lacquer. So I just loosen it. It's just done up snug. It's not done up tight. It's just there so it's not moving. Now I know I want to swing the arm out. So I want to, this screw here, that's an eccentric. Rotating it one way or the other will either swing this arm in, relative, the end of the arm in, relative to the rangefinder, or the other way around. We want this arm to swing out a bit there, so I'm just going to, which will allow the mechanism to drop back further. So I'm just going to rotate that slightly, and it requires very little indeed, and I'm going to check to see what result I got. Well, now my images are aligned nicely at infinity, but I have to rotate my focus ring round to halfway to the 50-foot mark, or that'll be the 20-metre mark if you've got a metric scale, before it lifts off before the images start to diverge at infinity. So I know that I'm not quite tight enough now with my adjustment, so it means I have to go back slightly the other way. So I'll just confirm that what I'm seeing is correct. Most definitely. So I'm going to just shift that screw slightly the other way. I'll just by the time you feel it move, you've almost always moved it too far. That feels very good to me. I'm going to check that, so I'm going to do up that lock screw. That's the centre screw. Just snug that up. When you do that lock screw up, sometimes it shifts things. So be aware of that. You may have to do this job once, twice or thrice, if you're lucky. Yeah, that did move things slightly. I still need to adjust that a little bit more. I'll just undo that lock very slightly. Just tighten the screw. It's almost as you just feel the pressure of it rather than it actually moving, because I can tell you, with fine adjustments you need to move it almost nothing. That's it. That's it. That'll do me nicely. So now I have my main infinity adjustment correct. I have the locking screw set up correctly. And if I'm lucky, it'll also be good at closer focusing distances. This is where it gets very entertaining. Your close focus adjustments are made at this end of the arm. So here we have two screws. The fourth position, if you like, the fourth screw head you see here, that's the lock. And this other one, that just holds the arm onto the body basically. This whole end of the arm here, you can see a little sector. There's a wee slot cut out there. You loosen this screw, you can move that arm across. And it changes the angle of the end of that arm, which is a slight curve. It shifts it one way or the other, which effectively shifts the rate, if you like, that this arm moves as it's drawn forward by the pin through this focusing range. Obviously this arm is pivoting. It's not staying in the same plane this way. It must be swinging in an arc, which means that as this pin comes forward on the end of the focus mechanism, this arm is effectively rubbing it over the front face of that pin. And by changing the angle of the end of this arm here, you change the rate at which it moves relative to the focus position. So now I would normally set this up. I've got a couple of targets I like to use. One is at about 9 feet, and I've got another target at about 7 feet. And I go away and check the rangefinder against those 2 points. And if I'm quite happy that they're correct, then the job is finished. If I'm not happy that the job it's correct, then you will have to adjust the close focus adjustment here. As soon as you touch that, as soon as you move that close focus adjustment, you will also have affected your main infinity adjustment, and you have to shuffle backwards and forwards between the two adjustments until you get the rangefinder where it reads correctly at infinity and correctly at a close focus distance. And that's not something I can really demonstrate here for you easily, but it's something that you will find out for yourselves in the fullness of time, if you need to adjust it. And if you don't need to adjust it, leave that one very much alone. I know this camera has been dealt to by someone else in the past, and I could tell that by various means. One of them, as I said, it looked like there was graphite pencil lead rubbed into the bottom surface of this rangefinder body. Somebody had done that. That hadn't happened at the factory. So I know someone had been into the rangefinder before and they either to clean it or adjust it or both, and so they may have made any change here that I can't really predict what change they might have made. I know that the infinity position here is good at the moment, and I'm going to go away and check my close focus mechanism, close focus position, see how that is. Okay, well I'm happy with that. I tested that rangefinder at 7, 8 and 10 feet. I've got various targets that I used to do that, and it looked exactly where I'd expect it to be. I already know it's good at infinity. So that rangefinder is finished. I'm finished adjusting it, it's ready to go. I don't need to do any more to that. You can put a touch of lacquer on that locking screw, should you so desire, but I found that to be generally unnecessary. When rangefinders lose their adjustment, it's not usually because the screws have come loose on the adjustment. It's usually that the camera's been dropped and the whole rangefinder has shifted on the casting, or sometimes that this glass component, this front component, as I say, is locked in with a couple of drops of lacquer. If somebody's had it out and they have not locked that back in place with lacquer, that glass element could move and you would lose your horizontal alignment. But this is all looking good, so this can be closed up now. So I'll just put the top back in place, so just checking everything is there. Need to clean any surfaces in the top cover that it might be dirty. Some of your grime from your rangefinder problems could easily be here. Not uncommonly, the rear viewfinder sight is dirty. The two pieces of glass in the front likewise can be dirty. And since this is a demo, I'm not going to bother cleaning those now. I'm sure you're quite capable of that. So I'll just drop my top cover back in place. Check that that's down flush against the body. Check that the film advance works and the shutter works. We have our two chrome screws that go into the top cover here and here. We have our single chrome screw that goes into the end of the body here. And we have our rewind knob complete with collar that go on the rewind. And I'm sure that you can put that back yourself too, so I won't bother detailing that. So there we have it. That's how you deal with the rangefinder on a Retina IIIc camera, small C, with the dual range meter, the one with the metal flap. If your meter has a black plastic frame, this is not for you. You've got a different. This was intended to show you how to get into this particular camera and deal with it. If you've got a Retina large C, the rangefinder is completely different. If you've got a Retina 3C with the later Retina 3 small c with the single range meter, the rangefinder is the same as this job, but getting in is not the same. And you will get into deep trouble if you just jump straight in. Thanks for watching.